begin with caries and the caries continuum. When we look at our modern caries management, we heard from two clinicians earlier. We see that we're moving away from the traditional operative approach, that drill and fill approach. And really we see that early detection of lesions is essential, also with successful risk prevention. So we really do need treatments that arrest and reverse those early lesions. And as we move forward with this modern caries management, it's important to understand that caries really is a disease process, and it does take time. So here's a schematic of the caries continuum. And if we look, we all know the cause and the start of this disease process are cariogenic bacteria that metabolize the sugar and form acid. Now we have healthy enamel, and that acid then could attack that healthy enamel, and we have demineralization. And that demineralization, we start to see a calcium loss or a mineral loss. This is reversible. We have the demineralization, we have remineralization. This can take time, but if factors contribute to the demineralization, what we start to get is an early lesion or a white spot lesion. If those factors aren't controlled, that early lesion then can start to have structural loss, and we can get a cavity, and that's the end result. This is irreversible, and dentist intervention is required. I'd like now to look at the role of fluoride. We all know that fluoride has been highly successful to combat caries, a huge public health success story there. But despite the wide use of fluoride, people are still getting cavities, and some World Health Organization statistics show that 60 to 90% of school children have cavities, and nearly 100% of adults have cavities, especially as adults are keeping their teeth longer. Some of the gingival recession and some of the root caries or dentin caries with adults. So conventional fluoride toothpaste does strengthen enamel, but when we look at it, it does nothing to attack the acids produced by the plaque biofilm, which really is the #1 cause in this disease process. So if we go back to that caries continuum schematic, we can see that fluoride does work on the tooth enamel. It makes the enamel less soluble by lowering the critical pH. So we have less demineralization and more remineralization than we would without fluoride. But it does nothing to the cause of that disease. So what the dental professional and the patient are looking for today are new technologies that complement the action of fluoride by reducing the harmful attack of the acids produced by the plaque biofilm so that we get even more or enhanced cavity protection. So what I'd like to do now is introduce a new technology that we've developed in cavity protection. It's been launched as Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection plus Sugar Acid Neutralizer. So I'd like to take a look at the technology, and if we look at the product, it contains 1.5% arginine. It contains calcium carbonate or dicalcium phosphate dihydrate, or dical, as the abrasive base. And then it's 1450 parts per million fluoride as sodium monofluorophosphate. Now when we look at this technology, which is the co-argine technology, we see the two components of it. First is arginine. Arginine is a natural basic amino acid. It's abundant in saliva and our salivary proteins, so the oral cavity does have the arginine. And when we think of cavities, as when we think of all disease processes, we often focus on the bad stuff, the cariogenic bacteria, the acids that are being produced by the cariogenic bacteria. However, with caries is actually a protective mechanism, and those are arginolytic bacteria, or even ureolytic bacteria that are present in the mouth. And we've heard a little bit about arginine and what arginine does, but it has been studied since the 60s, as well as urea, in looking at the capability of producing a base. And what happens with arginine is actually this protective arginolytic bacteria that's able to utilize the arginine to form a base. And we all know about calcium. It's a natural element. With the caries process, it's really a key mineral for remineralization. Teeth are made of calcium. And it also helps maintain that supersaturation with tooth mineral. So when you look at the beneficial effect of alkali production, when we look through the literature on what alkali production does with the caries process, that it helps mediate that extreme drop in pH. So you don't have that demineralization, that attack onto the tooth enamel. But it also can stabilize the microbial community so that you don't only have cariogenic bacteria there, you can have a balance of some of the protective bacteria. And it enables this protective bacteria to survive in the presence of cariogenic bacteria because they help mediate the pH inside their cells as well as outside to help them exist. And also this bacteria that takes an arginine is forming ATP as an energy source, so they're able to survive. And if we have that alkaline production, again, we're maintaining that supersaturation with respect to enamel solubility. So I'd like to take us back to that caries continuum that I put out. And if we look, the pro-argine technology really works on the plaque bacteria, the cause of the caries. And what it does is it neutralizes these acids before they can harm the teeth. And the studies that have been run have shown that arginine present in the oral cavity is able to be utilized by the arginolytic bacteria to make the base. And what happens is we're raising the plaque pH to help with that alkali condition. The technology also contains the calcium, and it helps with enhancing that remineralization of the tooth enamel. So when we look at the combination of pro-argine plus fluoride, we can see that it works across the caries continuum. What I'd like to do now is take you through the clinical studies that were run on this new technology. And how I formatted this is really 3 separate buckets. The first bucket I call plaque metabolism studies. And in this area, we're really assessing the activity or the functionality of plaque. How is the plaque behaving in response to the technology? What's occurring? What's the mode of action? After that, we run intraoral or in situ studies. And that really is assessing the effects on the tooth mineral to see if we're affecting anything of that end result of the disease state. And then lastly, it's caries clinical trials. And really 3 areas we've looked at. The first are early enamel caries studies, to look at those early lesions, to see if there are early enamel lesions, to see if they're arrested, if they're reversed. And these were 6-month studies which we utilized quantitative light fluorescence, or QLF. We also ran root caries studies, looking at dentin or adult caries. And again, these were 6-month studies with traditional caries measurements. And lastly, there'd be a 2-year traditional clinical caries trial, looking at cavities, which were also one in this bucket. So let's look at the first area in terms of plaque metabolism. And in all of these studies, what we did is we ran double-blind parallel studies. There were about 30 subjects in each group. One group used the test dentifrice that we tested, the other group used the control dentifrice, and it was 2 times brushing per day. In these studies, fasting plaque was taken about 12 hours post-brushing. So the last brushing was done the evening before plaque collection, and there was no brushing in the morning or eating or drinking in the morning of collection. And what we measured is we measured the plaque pH before sucrose challenge, and that we termed a resting pH, where it's known. We then utilized this plaque to measure the base production. Then there was plaque measured after the sucrose challenge, termed the terminal pH, and then we used lactic acid as a biomarker just to see the acid production. And again, lactic acid is one of the more detrimental organic acids, so we wanted to see that. But really measuring the pH is really measuring the functionality of the plaque. So we've recently published 2 studies in this plaque metabolism area. In both of the studies, the test dentifrice was the 1.5% arginine product with 1450 parts per million sodium MFP in a dical abrasive base, and the control was a 1450 sodium fluoride silica toothpaste. In the first study, it was a 2-week treatment period. In the second study, they used the product for 12 weeks. Now, because we're crunched on time in these talks, I just want to give the overall results for these studies. And we did really see that arginine caused an increase in the base production in the plaque, which did help neutralize the acids that were formed. It resulted in a higher plaque pH before and after the sucrose challenge, as compared to a conventional fluoride toothpaste containing only fluoride. So even though we have these plaque benefits documented, really the question that should be asked into remineralization and demineralization benefits to see if we had a prevention of demineralization and a promotion of remineralization. So in this area, we run what I call intraoral studies, which are really in situ studies. And the first study that we ran, I term a remineralization-demineralization study. You could see over here, what we do in these studies are subjects wear a partial denture, and inside that partial denture, we embed enamel thin sections. These sections have artificial early lesions in them. So what we're measuring is mineral changes or remineralization of these early lesions by microradiography and image analysis. These are double-blind crossover studies with 30 subjects. It's a 2-week treatment time of 2 times per day brushing. And all of these in situ studies include a positive and a negative control. The positive control has the same amount of fluoride as the test product, and the negative control is a non-fluoride toothpaste or a low level of fluoride of about 250 parts per million. The second type of study that we run, I term the demineralization-remineralization study. And this really is to assess demineralization. In this study, we use an upper palatal retainer, and in that upper palatal retainer, sound enamel blocks are embedded. Also, we put a wire mesh to accumulate and encourage plaque growth. So in these type of studies, we measure the microhardness so that we can determine the percent of demineralization in these enamel blocks. This study is a little bit different in that we use an exaggerated condition in that the retainer with the enamel blocks is dipped into sucrose 10 times, into 10% sucrose 4 times per day. And that really is to encourage the demineralization of the enamel. This is a double-blind crossover study with about 18 to 24 subjects. It's only a 5-day treatment with 2 times brushing per day. And as with our other in situ study, it also includes a positive and negative control. So we've recently published 3 of these in situ studies. In the first study, which was a remineralization study, the test products were the arginine toothpaste with 1450 parts per million MFP, and either a calcium carbonate base or a dical base. And really the purpose of this was to determine the efficacy of the ProArgin technology plus 1450 parts per million fluoride in the promotion of remineralization. We also wanted to determine the parity of calcium sources. In the second and third study, these were those demineralization-remineralization studies to look at the prevention of demineralization. In the second study, we ran the arginine toothpaste with the fluoride in the dical base, and that was again to look at the ProArgin technology with 1450 fluoride in preventing demineralization. But if you remember when I described this study, we accumulate and encourage the growth of plaque on the wire meshes. So we also took the harvested plaque and we wanted to look at some of those plaque metabolism or functionality benefits of the plaque. Then in the last study, study number 3, we ran the 1.5% arginine toothpaste in calcium carbonate, but we lowered the level of fluoride to 1,000 parts per million, just to see the effect on demineralization of the ProArgin technology with the lower level of fluoride. And then we also took the plaque and assessed for the plaque metabolism benefits. I'm going to review the first study on the remineralization benefits and the last study on the demineralization benefits of the technology. So here's the results looking at the remineralization of the mineral gain. You can see that the positive control was significantly better than the negative control. But when we look at the 2 test products, the arginine-containing toothpaste and the calcium carbonate base or the dical base, they were significantly better than the conventional fluoride toothpaste. In fact, it provided 4 times greater remineralization. Let's now look at how it prevents demineralization. So if you look at this study with the demineralization, we could see that the test product was better at preventing demineralization, that the positive control was better at preventing demineralization than the negative control. But the test product was significantly better at preventing demineralization than the conventional fluoride toothpaste with the same level of fluoride. In this study, we also measured for base production. So if you look at the last bar on the graph, we can see the test product with arginine produced significantly more base than the positive control fluoride toothpaste and the toothpaste without fluoride, which was the negative control. So looking at these in situ results, we can see that the toothpaste with the arginine and the calcium base was significantly better at promoting remineralization and preventing demineralization versus the conventional fluoride toothpaste with just fluoride. We could see we had parity of the calcium sources. Calcium carbonate and dicarb behaved the same, and also was efficacious in higher and the lower levels of fluoride. The last bucket that we looked at were the caries clinical trials, and we've run 7 caries clinical studies looking at the effects. We ran 3 studies looking at early enamel caries lesions. We ran 2 studies looking at the root caries or the adult caries, and then we also ran 2 two-year traditional clinical caries trials. So let's first look at the reversal and arrest of the early enamel lesions. We used the quantitative light fluorescence, or the QLF, to assess these early enamel lesions. And for those of you who are not familiar with QLF, what happens is a blue light is used to shine onto the teeth, and then you get a green fluorescence from the dentin enamel junction. You can measure that fluorescence, and the loss of the fluorescence indicates that there's a demineralization. With video repositioning software and a software analysis, we can measure the lesion area and also measure the fluorescence. And then we get a lesion volume area that we can use for assessment. All of these were 6-month studies with exams at baseline, 3 months, and 6 months. These were run in children with about 150 children per group. And again, in these studies, there were 2 times daily brushing, and there was supervised brushing in school. We recently published 3 of the QLF studies that we've run. The first and second study were run in China, and the last study was run in Thailand. You can see the test products that were run. In the first study, we ran the arginine toothpaste with 1450 parts per million fluoride and the calcium carbonate base. A matching positive control had everything except the arginine, and the negative control was a non-fluoride toothpaste. In study 2, the test product was the arginine 1450 fluoride toothpaste and the dical base. The positive control was a 1450 sodium fluoride silica toothpaste, and the negative control was a non-fluoride toothpaste. And the third study run in Thailand, the test product was a 1.5% arginine toothpaste with 1450 fluoride and the dical base with a matching positive control. When we look at the 6-month results for all of these studies, we can see there was a significant reduction in caries versus the conventional fluoride toothpaste. We were approximately at a 22 to 27% reduction in these early caries lesions. What's interesting about these studies is that in study 2 and study 3, the arginine toothpaste with fluoride and the dical base, the results at 3 months was similar to the fluoride dentifrice at 6 months. And we look at study number 3, the arginine toothpaste with 1450 fluoride and the calcium carbonate base. Study number 1, we could see the reduction at 3 months was greater than the fluoride dentifrice at 6 months. What I'd like to take you to now is the reversal and arrest of the root caries. And this was measured by conventional clinical hardness measurements using a sharp probe. So you have hard, leathery, or soft lesions. These 2 were 6-month studies with the exams at baseline, 3 months, and 6 months. There were approximately 150 adults per group, and there were 2 times daily brushing per day. 2 of the studies have recently been published. The first study was run in China. The test product was the 1.5% arginine toothpaste with 1450 fluoride and the calcium carbonate base. The positive control was 1450 parts per million sodium fluoride and a silica base, and the negative control was a non-fluoride toothpaste. The second study run in Brazil, the test product was arginine with the 1450 fluoride in the dical base, and the positive control was a matching positive control toothpaste. When we look at the 6-month results in terms of percent caries reduction versus the fluoride dentifrice, we could see fairly consistent results, significantly better than the conventional fluoride toothpaste, with reduction between 21 to 27%. What I'd like to review now are the 2-year traditional caries clinical trial that we ran, assessing cavitation. The exams were at baseline 12 months and 2 years, and DMFT and DMFS scores were reported. There were approximately 2,000 children per group, and there were 3 study groups. The test toothpastes had the arginines with the 1450 fluoride. One of the bases was calcium carbonate, the other base was the dical, and the control fluoride toothpaste was a 1450 sodium fluoride silica-based toothpaste. The treatment was home use twice daily. 2 studies were run. The first study was run in Thailand, and the second study was run in China. I'd like to now look at the results from the first study. And if you look at the 2-year increment over here, we can see about an 18 to 21% reduction in new cavities for the arginine test groups compared to the positive control of the conventional fluoride toothpaste. In study 2, the results were fairly consistent. If you look at the 2-year increment, you can see about a 20% reduction in new cavities with the test toothpaste containing 1.5% arginine. When you look at these results at the 2-year point, it is equivalent to use of a fluoride toothpaste versus a non-fluoride toothpaste, which is giving you about a 25% reduction. So when we look at these caries clinical trials, we see that we have 5 clinical studies that show a significant arrest and reversal of the early caries lesions or the root caries lesions. We also have 2 traditional caries clinical trials that support a significant decrease in the formation of new cavities. So in summary, looking at all of these results and the caries process, we can see that caries is preventable, and early lesions really should be arrested or reversed as part of that modern caries management. And when we think about newer technology in caries management, they really should work in conjunction with the known benefit of fluoride that aids prevention and protection of the dentition. And lastly, with the new technology, we are showing that clinical studies support that dentifrices containing 1.5% arginine and insoluble calcium base and fluoride provide superior protection against caries versus